The crew of a passenger jet search in vain for their airport.
Look carefully.
Rain is making it impossible to see.
Inside, missed approach. Go around.
More than 200 passengers are on board.
As I turned around, a huge fireball came out.
Investigators search for clues. Could a vital missing piece of equipment be responsible for the crash?
I think the best way to describe that would have been irresponsible.
I know a lot of people could have walked off that plane that night. Nothing will change my views on that.
Nimitz Hill, Guam. Once the site of fierce American offensives during World War II, for over 50 years there's been peace here. Now the hill is peaceful, invaded by hunters. And the normal quiet is broken by the roar of jumbo jets as they fly overhead. Every night, commercial pilots must fly over this tall, rocky outcrop and land at Guam's Agana International Airport. Flights come from airports all across Asia. Just past midnight, on August the 6th, 1997, Korean Airlines Flight 801 is on its way to Guam from Seoul, South Korea. 42-year-old captain Park Young-chol is at the controls. A former Korean Air Force pilot, Park has been flying 747s for more than 6 years. Just a few months ago, he received a Flight Safety Award from the President of Korean Air for successfully handling a 747 engine failure at low altitude. Park is supposed to be flying to the United Arab Emirates tonight, but a scheduling change has put him in command of this shorter flight to Guam. In the cabin, Korean, Japanese, and Western tourists are heading for Guam's pristine beaches. Guam is a U.S. territory run under U.S. law. The island is tiny, fewer than 600 square kilometers, but there's enough sand to keep people coming. "24-year-old Sean Burke and his girlfriend Wendy Bunton are planning to make the most of Guam's beaches. They're flying in from San Diego for a vacation.
Sean and Wendy were going to Guam to do some scuba diving, reef diving, and at the same time, they were going to visit her brother, who was in the Navy over there. He was a Navy doctor.
Flight 801 is taking Barry Small back to work. He's returning to Guam from New Zealand for another 6-month contract as a helicopter pilot, but he does it with a heavy heart.
The night before I left, my father had a heart attack, and I had to CPR him till the ambulance arrived, and decided to cancel the contract so I could help him. But he was insistent that you must carry on with your job.
The flight is still a couple of hours from Guam when the calm evening is brutally interrupted.
Watch the speed. It could be severe turbulence. Make an announcement to have everyone in their seats with seatbelts on.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your first officer speaking.
Even an experienced flyer like Barry Small is surprised.
There was no lead up to this turbulence, and anybody that wasn't strapped down was going to be airborne, that's for sure. The lockers were rattling, and anything in those lockers was bound to break. It was a horrendous shudder.
It's heavy turbulence. But the crew ride it out. Eventually, the flight returns to normal.
We're through it. Let the passengers know.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your first officer speaking. We have cleared the turbulent area.
But it's left some of the passengers shaken.
Shh. It's okay, Rika. We'll be there soon.
Ma'am, if you don't mind, I'm gonna move this duty-free up here for you.
The cabin crew cleans up. And the passengers settle in for the rest of the trip.
Because of the 12-hour stopover in Seoul and no change of clothes, it was getting rather uncomfortable in a tropical environment, and I took my shoes off just to relax a little bit and feel more comfortable.
Captain Park and his crew begin looking ahead. They know there's more unsettled weather coming. Rain has been hitting Guam on and off all day. In fact, August is the heart of the island's rainy season. Small showers can pop up, making visibility unpredictable.
In that particular part of the world, they have what's called a top hat thunderstorm. That is a very small thunderstorm that builds up all times of the day, and it's very short-lived, so it wouldn't hamper the pilot's ability to actually conduct the approach. It's going to just obscure his view for some period of time while they're transiting through it.
Just past 1 in the morning, Korean Air Flight 801 makes initial radio contact with Kurt Mayo, the radar controller at Guam's airport.
Guam Center, Korea 801, leaving level 410 for 2,600.
Korean Air 801, roger.
The crew aren't the only ones preparing to land. After more than 3 hours of flying through the night, the passengers get ready for the airport.
I saw the lights of Guam, and I knew exactly where the aircraft was because I've been there many times before.
Captain Park has navigated Nimitz Hill 9 times before, but this time there's a major difference. At airports around the world, pilots land with the help of a glide slope, an electronic system that helps planes safely touch down. If pilots follow the directions given by the glide slope, it guides them to the foot of the runway. The glide slope beacon at Guam Airport has been removed for extensive maintenance. Without the airport transmitter, Park's glide slope indicator in the cockpit is useless. Landing without a glide slope is rare, but it does happen. In Guam, the transmitter is scheduled to be out of service for more than 2 months. But impaired navigation is only part of the problem. Captain Park is fighting exhaustion.
They make us classic guys work to the maximum. Probably this way, hotel expenses are saved on cabin crews and they maximize flight hours. Really sleepy.
Now, as the plane approaches Guam, clouds and rain block their way.
Captain, Guam condition is no good. It's raining a lot.
It's been several hours since Captain Park and his crew left Seoul. Now the rain is making the late flight more difficult. Tired and fighting the weather, the captain begins the final approach to the airport. August the 6th, 1997. It's close to 1:30 in the morning. On Korean Airlines Flight 801, a tired captain is preparing to land at Agana Airport on the island of Guam. In the cabin, 237 passengers are getting ready to begin their holidays or get back to work.
The flight, other than the turbulence, was totally normal. We had our meals, and it was just a totally normal flight in every way.
As the jet approaches Guam, an erratic storm pushes rain and clouds between the plane and the airport. It's hard to see. The captain wants to make a small change in course to avoid the worst of the weather.
Request 20-mile deviation to the left as we are descending.
Guam Center, Korean 801. Request deviation 10 miles left of track.
Korean Air 801, Roger.
Veering around cloud cover, Captain Park Young-chol struggles to get a clear view of his approach. And finally, he sees what he's been looking for.
It's Guam. Guam.
Good.
Today, the weather radar helps us a lot.
Korean Air 801, cleared for ILS, runway 6, left approach. Glide slope unusable.
Air traffic controller Kurt Mayo reminds the crew that the airport's glide slope equipment is out of service. It would normally help them find the runway, but since it's under repair, it isn't sending out any signals. Then, with the crew in the middle of their landing sequence, something unexpected happens. The glide slope appears to come to life.
Is the glide slope working? The glide slope, yeah?
Yes. Yes, it's working. Why is it working?
It's a confusing moment. Unsure what's happening, the crew continue to prepare for their landing.
60 check, gear down.
Check.
Approaching 1400.
Since today's glide slope condition is not good, we need to maintain 1,440. Please set it.
Set.
At 40 minutes after 1 in the morning, Guam controller Kurt Mayo once again makes contact with the crew.
Korean Air 801, contacting Ganya Tower 118.1.
He passes the plane on to the airport tower and says goodbye in Korean.
Ganya Igaseo.
수고하십시오. 118.1.
It's the last time he'll ever talk to the crew of the jetliner.
The guy working here probably was a GI in Korea before.
Aganya Tower, Korean Air 801 to intercept the localizer 6 left.
Korean Air 801 Heavy, Aganya Tower. Runway 6 cleared to land.
Korean 801 Roger, clear to land 6 left.
Flaps 30.
Flaps 30.
As the plane descends, clouds and rain close in again. They've lost sight of the airport.
Look carefully.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're preparing for landing at Aganya International Airport in Guam. Please return your seats to the upright position, fasten your seatbelt, and prepare for landing.
Set 560 feet.
As the plane flies closer to the ground, the crew expects they'll see the airport any second. But the rain makes it hard to see anything.
Isn't the glide slope working? Wiper on.
Then a computerized voice fills the cockpit. It's the ground proximity warning system, which tells the crew they're just 500 feet in the air. But they still can't see the runway.
I've done this flight many, many times before, and when I estimated we're about 30 seconds from landing, I bent down to put my shoes on.
200.
The plane is now just 200 feet above the ground, but still the crew can't see the runway. They're quickly running out of time.
Let's make a missed approach.
Not inside.
Not inside. Missed approach.
Go around.
Go around. Flaps.
I had no doubts this was still just a normal landing, and the aircraft went on and was decelerating quicker than normal, but nothing to really alarm me. Things were getting pretty serious then. The aircraft was starting to break apart. I forced myself up to look, and there was just bottles, bags, everything you can imagine was coming out. Only way I can really describe it is like about 1,000 737s landing all at once.
On a wooded hillside in Guam, the shattered plane finally grinds to a halt.
I was too scared to undo my seatbelt at that stage because I was waiting for the next bounce to go over another ravine or whatever was going to happen next.
Miraculously, 11-year-old Rika Matsuda has survived and is virtually unhurt. But her mother is trapped and injured. Barry Small is also injured and terrified that fire is sweeping through the plane.
The fire started in the front and proceeded from the front to the back towards me. There was no floor lighting or anything like that, but the fire was so intense there was no problems to see where I was going.
If help doesn't arrive soon, those who survived the initial crash may be trapped inside the cabin.
Korean Air 801 Heavy, Tower. How do you hear?
Everyone in the cockpit has been killed. But airport authorities still have no idea what's happened aboard Flight 801. Hurt by the crash and desperate to escape the ruined plane, Barry Small stumbles towards an opening in the cabin.
I got back these six seats, and then there was about a 6-foot drop down to the ground. The undercarriage had gone completely. I come across an obstacle that I had to cross because it was the only part that wasn't burning.
Here, go! Get over it!
Rika's mother tells her daughter to get out of the burning plane.
Go now, get out of here. Go. Now go. You must go. Go. You must go now. Go.
The fire is spreading quickly. As passengers struggle to deal with the disaster, rescue workers don't even know the plane's gone down.
The fire engulfed both the Asian gentleman and myself to the extent that it burnt my arms, and my watch got that hot it was melting into my flesh. and I had to flick it off.
Minutes earlier, Kurt Mayo had passed the passenger jet onto the local tower controllers. Now he learns it hasn't landed yet.
Approach Aganya. Did Korean Air come back to you?
No?
I cleared him to land, and I don't know where he's at.
He didn't land?
Negative.
Oh my God.
Within minutes, Guam Fire Chief Chuck Sanchez is en route.
I was thinking, my God, 747, where's it at? Is it on island? Is it on sea? What is the plan here?
We both fell off the side of the container and the Asian gentleman disappeared into the jungle. So I rolled over onto my back and I managed to crawl with my elbows. There was still a little bit of skin on my elbows left.
Small has a badly broken right leg. He crawls away from the wreckage. Many more people remain trapped inside.
Lying there, it just sounded like a battlefield. It was just like a movie. Things were exploding short of me, going over the top of me. Things were landing beside us on fire. It's just indescribable.
There's only one way for emergency crews to get down to the wreck site, along a single access road that runs beside Nimitz Hill. As they race to the accident scene, rescue workers discover a major obstacle. A pipeline has been ripped out of the ground by the crash and thrown across the road. There's no way around it. Having heard about the crash, the island's governor, Carl Gutierrez, has joined the rescue team.
Engine Company 7, get this thing out of the way. You guys, get the medic kits and come with me.
We reached the closest point of approach to the crash site, which was up the hill and probably about another 150 yards downhill. I go, gentlemen, turn on whatever lights you got to guide us down this path, and let's do it.
We started running and just listening to the screams so we can guide ourselves because there was just nothing but overgrowth on the side of the road.
At one point, I stopped him and I go, Governor, sir, I need you to make some serious decision in this operation, and I don't think I want you to move further. I'd like for you to stay on this side, and I don't want you to get hurt. Let us do this job. And he goes, no, I want to help you guys.
At the site of the crash, flames are devouring the wreckage. Hampered by his broken leg, Small can only look on as people cry out for help.
I lay at that bank for the whole night. During that time, hearing people call out in a foreign language, which initially sounded like good, healthy calls for help, then turned into screams as the fire got more intense. And after a period of time, the fire even grew worse, and the screams faded away.
Finally, almost an hour after the accident, Sanchez's crew reaches the site.
I split them up into 2 rescue and search units. I need half of you guys to start from the tail end, and I need the other half to start from the front end of this plane. And let's meet in the middle, and let's do what we can to help the survivors here.
Guam's governor, Carl Gutierrez, sees Rika Matsuda all alone and crying out for her mother.
Don't cry, little angel.
Everything will be okay.
I did not dare let her go. It's something that I almost like there was a bond between me and that little girl. And I found out later she was 11, but she looked really smaller than 11 years old.
Fire Chief Chuck Sanchez finds Barry Small in the swordgrass.
Take my jacket.
He gave me his fire jacket and put under my head to comfort me.
Here, go. That way. Let's go.
Later on, he was very distressed that he had to come back and get it back because he was getting burnt, dragging people and bodies out of the aircraft.
We were cutting trees to use for splint. We were taking off our protective gears to cover the survivors.
It's clear to rescue personnel that for many, they've arrived too late. But Sanchez isn't giving up. He sends a team to search further into the wreckage.
Group 2, start at the tail and work forward. Go.
All I heard was this large explosion, man, right where they were at. Then I go, did we lose our people?
A Boeing 747 has crashed on a rugged hillside in Guam, just a few miles short of the airport. There were 254 people on board. Rescue workers comb through the wreckage when an explosion rips through the remains of the plane.
No radio transmission at all. We lost all transmission, and then finally somebody came out. Sir, we're okay. We survived the explosion. Everybody's accounted for.
It's not until the dawn finally comes that rescue workers can see the extent of the damage. The plane has spilled down the mountain and broken into several large pieces. Only 26 people survived the disaster. Friends and family are desperate for any news. Many bodies are badly burned. Although most of the passengers are Korean, Sean Burke and his girlfriend Wendy Bunton are among a few Americans on the flight. Thousands of kilometers away, news of the crash reaches Sean's parents. When she hears about the crash, Sean Burke's stepmother doesn't know if Sean is alive or dead.
He could have been burned in the crash. He could be unconscious in a local hospital there, and we just wanted to go over and bring him back. So, I mean, because that kept going through our minds that he possibly could be laying on the hillside.
Since Guam is an American territory, the responsibility for investigating the crash falls to the National Transportation Safety Board. Greg Fife is the lead investigator. When he arrives on the site, he has to contend with more than just the carnage of the plane crash. Grieving family members surround the scene, making it especially difficult for investigators to work.
As an accident investigator, you have to keep your emotions in check. It's like being a doctor in an ER room. You see this devastation, you see this tragedy unfolding in front of you. you hear about all of the sad stories, especially when there are kids and innocent people involved. And as an accident investigator, you have to keep those emotions in check because you have to remain objective, you have to remain emotionless to be able to do your job effectively.
And we had a whole building full of people just like us. They were all grieving and crying out. It was just horrible.
One of the first things we did was we went out on site and we did what we call a site survey. We had to really get an understanding of what we were dealing with as far as the wreckage and how we were going to conduct the on-scene investigation.
During the preliminary investigation, Fife finds that large sections of the plane are almost completely intact.
The airplane landed relatively under control. That is, that the pilot basically landed the airplane into the trees and into that terrain. Unfortunately, it was 3 miles from the airport.
Investigators find a number of items that survived the crash and the fire that followed, including the landing chart the crew was using as it approached Guam Airport. Investigators also find Captain Park's travel bag, and in it discover a small plastic pill container. Captain Park had been prescribed a variety of drugs, including pills containing benzodiazepine, a class of drugs often used as a sedative. The pills and tissue samples from Captain Park's remains are sent for analysis. The landing chart becomes part of a growing pile of evidence. Using information from the jet's flight data recorder, investigators recreate the plane's flight path. The relatively gentle slope of its descent supports Fife's belief that the jet all but landed on the hillside. But the flight path shouldn't look like this.
Korean Air 801 cleared for ILS runway 6 left approach. Glide slope unusable.
Korean 801, roger, clear for ILS runway 6 left.
The crew had been told that the glide slope at the airport wasn't working. It meant that the captain had to take more manual control of his plane.
It is now up to the pilot to fly an established procedure called a step down, where he starts at an altitude of, say, 2,000 feet. When he gets to a particular point located by what they call DME, or distance measuring equipment, he then starts a descent to another prescribed altitude.
If the crew was following the step-down procedure, its flight path would resemble a set of stairs. But after the first step, the plane enters a long, slow descent.
If you don't hit those step downs, and those altitudes are prescribed to give you terrain clearance, if you don't fly that as depicted on the approach chart, you run the risk of flying into an obstruction or high terrain.
The plane's cockpit voice recorder has also been recovered from the debris. Fife and his team begin to analyze it, hoping to better understand what happened in the cockpit.
Set 560 feet.
On 2 separate occasions, Captain Park gave orders to descend long before he was supposed to. But there are other clues on the tape as well.
The cockpit voice recorder provided us, the investigators, quite a bit of information. But one of the key elements that we found was that the flight crew appeared to be tired.
Really sleepy.
This was a chartered flight, so it would have put them on what we call backside of the clock flying. That is, they wouldn't be normally flying during the day, they are now flying at night. And typically your body says you should be asleep when it's dark outside.
The sedatives could have made a difficult situation even worse. But when the lab results come back, they're conclusive. While he had the pills with him, there are no traces of them in Captain Park's system. When lead investigator Greg Fife returns to the cockpit voice recorder, he focuses on the captain's discussion of the glide slope.
Is the glide slope working? The glide slope, yeah?
Yes. Yes, it's working. Why is it working?
he started to see the glide slope needle move a little bit and started to question the other crew members as to whether or not the glide slope was actually working or not.
It's early in the morning. After a long flight, Captain Park is tired, perhaps confused and distracted by the unexpected readings on his glide slope.
It became very apparent listening to the cockpit voice recorder that in fact he got fixated.
But Fyfe still doesn't understand why Park's glide slope appeared to be working. Was there a problem on this plane? Or is the equipment susceptible to problems that could affect other jets as well? To find out, he brings in navigation expert Nelson Sponheimer.
I spent some time looking at the transcript, trying to determine what the navigation issues were, why a good airplane was in the wrong place, and to investigate the apparent confusion on the part of the crew who thought that the glide slope was working at least part of the time.
Sponheimer sends a team of investigators to Guam. They fly over the island, trying to determine whether radio signals from a nearby military base could have acted on the plane, making it seem like the glide slope was working.
Glide slope receivers can respond to non-glide slope signals, particularly when the intended glide slope signal is absent. If there are spurious signals on the channel and they contain the right information, they can cause intermittent movements of the glide slope needle.
Set 560 feet.
But the signals wouldn't be sustained. Like a light switch turning quickly on and off, the glide slope indicator would give periodic indications that it was working, but not for long.
My conclusion was that spurious signals, whether they be from other transmitters or failed ground equipment such as personal walkie-talkies, could not cause a sustained warning flag movement.
If the glide slope wasn't fully operating, why did Park believe it was? And even if he did believe it was working, why did he crash into Nimitz Hill?
Isn't the glide slope working? Wiper on.
As investigators continue to try to piece together the causes of the crash, Barry Small is trying to understand why he and 25 others survived.
I went to touch my shoes, we hit the ground, and I was accidentally in the perfect crash position by some sort of miracle.
An airline engineering apprentice and helicopter pilot, Small understands airplanes.
I do firmly believe there are some changes that could be made to aircraft.
Small believes that the way crossbars are built into aircraft seats caused one of his legs to break, but luck saved his other leg.
My right leg went forward and crashed into the bar in front of the seat and broke. My left leg was saved by my carry bag stopping my leg going forward and hit that bar.
Still able to walk on his one good leg, Small escapes while others remain trapped inside. Since she's young, Rika Matsuda's legs are shorter than a normal adult. Sitting normally, her legs wouldn't have been pressed against the crossbar on impact, so she was able to escape the plane.
Oh, go now, get out of here.
While her mother died. Small is also convinced that the flames that first spread through the cabin of Korean Air Flight 801 were preventable.
They estimate that those top lockers had over 462 litres of burnable alcohol on board. Had the plane been full, there could be at least twice that amount.
During the crash, Small believes that the duty-free alcohol mixed with oxygen in the plane's ceiling. The combination ignited with deadly results. It's a fire he thinks could have been prevented.
Why have this risk, alcohol and oxygen? I thought, you know, for aircraft's about safety, and this is just a blatant breaking of the rules of safety as far as I'm concerned.
As he continues to recover from the accident, Small is determined to prevent what had happened to him from happening to others. He decides to push for changes on how seats are made and how duty-free alcohol is stored. For NTSB investigator Greg Feith, the biggest question still remains. How did an experienced pilot, one recently honored by his company for his safety record, crash his plane 5 kilometers short of the airport? As the investigation continues, he discovers that the landing chart the crew was using was more than 6 months old and out of date. It's an indication that the crew could have been better prepared for the landing. When he reviews the training practices for Korean Airlines, Feith uncovers more gaps in the information that the crew received.
We found that the Korean Airlines flight crew had all of their training based on airports with approaches where the DME was always co-located at the airport.
DME is distance measuring equipment, electronic beacons that tell pilots where they are in relation to the airport. Often the final beacon is found at the foot of the runway. That was not the case in Guam. The airport was in fact 5 kilometers further on. Struggling to see through the rain, Park was unable to find the airport. Distracted by the unexpected glide slope readings, Park used the final beacon as a guide, expecting it to take him right to the runway.
Let's make a missed approach. Not inside. Not inside. Missed approach. Go around. Go around. Flaps.
It's clear that Flight A01 flew an approach about 3 miles premature. In other words, the descent was about 3 miles early. It was a nominal approach otherwise, just to the wrong location.
We think that based on fatigue and some of their training, that in fact, when the flight crew crashed the airplane, when the counter got to 0, they thought the airport should be there.
A fully loaded 747 weighs more than 200,000 kilograms. Like an enormous ocean liner, it can't change course quickly. Blinded by rain and relying on their equipment, the crew of Korean Air Flight 801 thought they were heading straight at the runway. When they realized something was wrong, it was too late. As the investigation continues, Feith and his team make a startling discovery. Equipment that would have given the crew more time to react had been disabled on purpose. In August of 1997, the crash of Korean Air Flight 801 took the lives of more than 200 people. The final accident investigation report is published more than 2 years after the crash. It lays blame on the Korean Airlines training methods and the crew's over-reliance on the jet's automation. But it also has sharp words reserved for the FAA, the body that regulates air travel in the United States. Because of an FAA decision, a critical piece of technology that could have saved Flight 801 was intentionally disabled. The Minimum Safe Altitude Warning System, or MSAW, is a standard piece of equipment at major American airports. But in Guam, the FAA had made a critical alteration to the way it was used.
Contact the Aganya Tower.
MSAW uses radar to watch the planes as they come into the airport. If they're too low, a warning is given to air traffic controllers, who can then relay it to the crew. But in Guam, the system kept giving nuisance readings to controllers.
The controllers kept getting these nuisance warnings. They redesigned the software and moved the limitations of the MSAW further away from the airport where it afforded no one a level of protection.
Instead of watching the planes as they neared the airport, the system in Guam now tracked them when they were more than 80 kilometers away over the ocean.
I think the best way to describe that would have been, and should be, irresponsible. Because you've taken this system that was designed as a level of protection, not only for the controller, but you've taken the protection away from the flying public.
For the passengers and crew of Flight 801, the lack of the MSOR system sealed their fate. If the system had been working, the crash could have been avoided. Without it, the crew had no warning at all.
The two pilots didn't want to die. They had families. No one wanted to die. We still do not blame them. The bottom line is nobody wanted to be in that situation. It was just something that happened.
For Barry Small, the years since the crash of Flight 801 have been emotional and frustrating. The Civil Aviation Authority in his homeland of New Zealand has acknowledged the potential danger posed by duty-free liquor on board, but so far no policies have been changed. His desire to modify airplane seat design has also been ignored.
I have taken several steps to put this idea forward, and in a lot of cases it's initially met with enthusiasm, but it eventually ends up in the too hard basket. And when I try to approach seat design people, no one wants to hear about it.
Sean Burke was never officially identified as a victim of Flight 801. Wendy Bunton was positively identified, but DNA samples only proved that a white male was on the plane near her.
Bill and I never gave up hope that Sean had survived the crash. Even after we came home for, I would say, a year or two, every time the phone rang, every time somebody knocked on the door, we expected a phone message saying, "Hi, Dad, this is your son, Sean."
Eventually, several years after the crash, Barry Small was able to give Kathy Burke and her husband some sense of finality and an enduring image of their son.
When we met him, and he wanted to tell us that in the 12-hour layover in Seoul, he was wandering around and finally heard two people speaking English. And he said they were so much in love that he did not want to interrupt their conversation.
For Sean's father, the deep sorrow of the crash will never completely leave.
For me, the grief of Sean's loss never ends. Hasn't gotten better, hasn't got worse. Just another day. For everybody else, it's gone. You know, I expect people to move on, but I'll be this way till the day I'm with him again.
For Barry Small, there is anger too, but also incredible gratitude for surviving.
So many people have told me that I survived for a reason. And I've been searching for that reason for 9 years now. And I truly believe if someone would listen to my story about the oxygen and alcohol and the improvement of the seats, that I could justify in my own mind that I don't have to feel guilty about surviving.
East of Los Angeles, a calm holiday weekend is shattered by a devastating explosion. A neighborhood is destroyed.
I I turned and saw my house totally on fire. All the houses behind me were all on fire.
Where are they? Where are they?
Fiery wreckage is strewn for blocks. Investigators must discover why this airliner crashed and find a way to stop it from ever happening again.
Mayday, Mayday.
Los Angeles International Airport, LAX, is one of the busiest in the world. It's used by 40 million passengers each year. More than 1,500 planes take off and land every day. It's August the 31st, 1986, Labor Day weekend. Today, a junior air traffic controller, Walter White, will be handling some of that traffic.
Let's go. That was the big one.
White isn't yet a fully fledged controller. He has to put in more time before he gets his final certification.
Hey, Carl, how's it going? Hey, slow, slow, slow.
It was a long weekend, and it was a beautiful day in Los Angeles. It was absolutely clear outside, which we call Chamber of Commerce type day.
You want to take a break? Have a cigarette? I can sit in for you.
That was my normal assigned shift, and Walter came in and asked me if I wanted a break, wanted to go smoke a cigarette, and I said, sure.
All right.
Traffic was light, it wasn't very busy, it was Sunday morning.
Well, certainly, any controller is looking to get seasoning, if you will. 3 months, 4 months, that's a pretty new controller.
Los Angeles Approach, good morning.
I mean, it wasn't my turn for a break. Walter wanted to work the sector. As I remember correctly, he wanted to work it for some proficiency time. He hadn't worked it in a while.
East Hill 60, can you see the runway 25 left?
Roger, LA Approach.
Thank you. Reduce speed to 200, then descend and maintain 6,000.
200, descend and maintain 6,000. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Several hundred kilometers to the south, passengers are boarding an Aeromexico DC-9. Dr. Donald Wong and his sons are returning from a highly successful fishing trip.
Jason, I think we should put it up in the kitchen.
They caught an enormous sailfish,
Your mom would love it.
which they plan to display at home.
Labor Day weekend was the last weekend before school was to start. Donald decided that it would be fun to take the boys fishing down in Mexico, to go deep sea fishing, which he'd only done one other time in his life. This would be a father-son bonding weekend. And it was also the first time that they had traveled without me.
Just east of LA, the suburban city of Cerritos wakes up slowly. In the 1970s, this bustling community had been one of the fastest growing in Los Angeles County.
My husband had been working out of town all week, and he was coming home for the weekend. And that Sunday morning, I decided, let's just stay home, not go to church.
I'm gonna go out and get your favorite things for a good breakfast. Javier, go and take a shower.
And I left to go to the grocery store. In the home was Alex. He was 14. His twin sister, Angelica. She was asleep. He was asleep still. And Javier, that was my 16-year-old. And my husband.
As Estrada leaves on her errand, Aeromexico Flight 498 is just 20 minutes from LA. Captain Antonio Valdez Prom is acting as co-pilot as they approach the city. First Officer Jose Valencia is piloting this leg of their journey.
Ready when you are, Cap.
About 22 kilometers south of LAX sits the Torrance Airport. Operating in the mammoth shadow of LAX, Torrance serves private planes and amateur pilots. It's one of several small airports that operate near LA, a region that has over 6,000 weekend flyers.
Fuel set.
At the end of a busy summer, William Kramer, his daughter Caroline, and wife Kathleen are finally taking to the skies.
Piper 4891.
All clear for takeoff. Good morning, Piper 4891. This is Torrance Tower. You're clear for takeoff from runway 5.
They're heading to Big Bear Lake.
Rolling tower.
About 200 kilometers northeast. A meticulous man, William Kramer is an executive for an engineering company. 6 years ago, at the age of 47, Kramer bought his first airplane, a stylish and swift Piper Cherokee.
Wings west 5225, Los Angeles approach, depart Sealed Beach, heading 320. Expect a visual approach, runway 25 left. Report airport in sight. Thanks.
Walter White's job as arrivals controller is to make sure incoming planes keep well clear of each other. He's directing them to land on one of two runways.
Aerial approach, runway 25 left. Thank you.
Southeast of LAX, the crew of Aeromexico Flight 498 is still a few minutes from their first contact with Walter White. But in the skies above Los Angeles, a deadly series of events is about to unfold. Dozens of people who have never met will be bound together forever in a tragedy that will affect everyone who flies.
Airspeed.
August the 31st, 1986, Labor Day weekend.
All clear for takeoff, Torrance.
Just south of Los Angeles, William Kramer and his family are finally on their way for a long-awaited holiday.
Okay, just an hour to go, we're in Big Bear Lake. The reporting, visibility of 14 miles today. Pretty good.
As the Torrance Airport recedes behind him, Kramer begins climbing to 3,000 meters on his way northeast to Big Bear Lake. Several kilometers away, a half-full DC-9 from Mexico is approaching Los Angeles International Airport. Less than 2,000 meters below them, Teresa Estrada is driving home with the groceries for a holiday breakfast. Her husband and 3 children are waiting just a few blocks away.
That's it. Holiday's over. PSA 1765, 12 plus, 1 mile southbound.
It's not a busy morning, and one by one, arrivals controller Walter White guides his planes in safely.
Report airport in sight.
At 11:47 a.m., he gets his first call from Aeromexico Flight 498.
Los Angeles approach, good morning.
This is Aeromexico 498.
Aeromexico 498, Los Angeles approach, 25 left, final approach course. Do you have information?
Aeromexico Flight 498 is now officially inside what's known as the Terminal Control Area, or TCA. Sometimes referred to as the birdcage, the TCA is a complex piece of three-dimensional airspace around the airport.
It's restricted airspace that's normally found around heavily congested airports or hub airports where the traffic density is extremely high and you need to control the access into and out of that airspace.
Aero Mexico 498, traffic 10 o'clock, 1 mile northbound, altitude unknown.
Roger, 498.
Aero Mexico 498, reduce speed to 190, then descend and maintain 6,000.
As the Aero Mexico plane descends, William Kramer and his family continue climbing.
I hope it's like this when we get to Big Bear.
We should be able to see the ocean by now. Hon, take a look at the map and look around the 4-5 and see if you can see any kind of landmarks that we can use.
Oh, what am I looking for?
This is Aero Mexico.
Walter White is keeping his eye on the Aero Mexico jet when his attention is abruptly drawn to another plane that's just appeared on his radar. It's not one he's expecting.
One approach, 66 Romeo is on a flight from Fullerton. Cruising altitude is 4,500. We'd like the following.
The pilot of a small Grumman Tiger asks White to help guide him through the crowded terminal control area. Pilots are supposed to contact LAX approach before they enter the controlled airspace. This pilot could be in the path of incoming traffic. But before White can deal with the private plane, he gets a call from the Aero Mexico DC-9.
What speed do you want? We're reducing to 290. No, to 190.
Okay, you can hold what you have, sir.
White decides to give the Aero Mexico jet the runway closest to their gate.
Change in plan, sir. Stand by.
Roger, 498.
With the DC-9 on hold, White turns to the intruder.
Grumman 66 Romeo, squawk 4524. Remain clear of the TCA.
White tells the pilot of the Grumman to use a unique radio channel, but he seems confused.
4, 5. What were the other two numbers?
4524. Grumman 66 Romeo, are you at 4,500 now?
Negative. We're at 3,400 and climbing.
Okay, you are right in the middle of the TCA, sir.
Grumman 66 Romeo, I suggest in future you look at your TCA chart. You just had an aircraft pass right off your left above you at
5,000. And we run a lot of jets right through there at 3,500.
Well, what do you suggest I do now?
As the crew of Aero Mexico Flight 498 continue to close in on the airport,
Landing lights.
their DC-9 is rocked by a violent shudder.
Bugs, altimeter bugs.
What was that? Aero Mexico 498, Los Angeles approach.
First Officer Valencia tries desperately to control their dive.
Aero Mexico 498,
Los Angeles approach.
This can't be.
I saw a huge explosion, just the red, vibrant colors of a fire, just huge explosion, like the way a bomb might hit the ground.
White is getting no response from the Aero Mexico jet.
Aero Mexico 498, Los Angeles approach.
And now he can't find it on his radar screen.
I'm sitting there talking with the two departure controllers and not really thinking. I hear Walter say something like,
I think I lost one. Aero Mexico 498, Los Angeles approach.
That immediately got everybody's attention. So I looked at the radars and could hear him calling Aero Mexico 498. Called him several times on the radio. Where was Aero Mexico? At this point, we weren't absolutely sure what had happened.
White calls to an incoming jet for help.
American 333 Heavy. I want you to take a look around at 11 o'clock. I just lost contact with a DC-9. Let me know if you see anything down there, please.
11 o'clock, 5 miles. What altitude?
He was last assigned 6. He's no longer on my radar scope, American 333 Heavy.
Okay, I see a very large smoke screen off on the left side of the aircraft, about 11 o'clock.
I went down the street to go to my house, and I saw a woman's head, that her body had been cut in a diagonal, and she was just laying there. There was nothing but debris and fires sporadically all over the place, and I could see the fire in the whole neighborhood.
Nearby, an engine from a local fire station had been on a training exercise led by Fire Captain Larry Hambleton.
All of a sudden, one of the firemen tapped me on the shoulder and said, "There's a big column of smoke, off to our left." So I picked up the mic and made a guess at the address.
Responding to a large fire north of 91 north of Terminator.
They came back and said, "Well, we've got a report of an airliner down." So I upgraded the response to basically triple what I initially asked for.
I'm calling for a third alarm and 2 air squads east of 183 in Terminator.
As we approached, I realized that in addition to the aircraft parts in the street, there were people, body parts, which changed the complexion of the whole thing.
Larry, get in here. Set up a perimeter. Hello? Hello? Can anybody hear me?
At Los Angeles approach, Walter White, deeply shaken by the crash, is relieved of duty.
I remember watching Walter get up and walk out of the room by himself. And, something inside of me was just, saying, this is not right, this is not right. Somebody's got to go with him.
Tony, he can't go out alone.
I could have been sitting there just as easy as him. And I don't know if I'd have done anything different than he did.
Helicopter news crews are quickly on the scene.
Using for medevacing.
There was a lot of fire in front of me, and my house was just totally on fire.
Frank! Angelica! Javier! Angelica!
And I saw my neighbor.
Where are they?
I said to her, "Rose, where's my family? What happened?" And she goes, "Oh, honey, your family's in here. They're over here. We're looking for you." And within myself, all I could do was thank God that they were safe and sound. She took me into her home, and I saw Alex.
Alex? Alex! What happened? Where's Angelica? Where's Angelica?
I don't know.
Where's Javier? Where's Papa?
I don't know, Mom. I'm sorry. I don't know, Mom.
And he started crying right away and said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm the only one that came out alive." And all I could do was hug him.
Pieces of fuselage have torn through nearby homes, setting them on fire. The tail section of the jet has been catapulted more than a block from the crash site.
Hello? Is there anybody in here?
As I surveyed the houses and the crash site around me, it was a very surreal experience to stand right there for probably 4 or 5 minutes before anybody else showed up and not see another living soul.
I have got wreckage all over the place. There are no survivors, just fatalities.
You know, I dealt with death on 1 or 2 or 3 people in a residential fire, but never a whole airliner full of people.
Let's go to work, guys.
I don't think I ever saw a whole human being. I gave them the job of finding body parts and wrapping them or covering them with yellow rescue blankets. No matter where it was, ever so small or whatever, you know, a hand or a torso or a leg or whatever. That became life to us. It was treated with respect. My memory of the incident is in a muted shade of brown. It's not black and white, it's not vivid color. You know, the grass isn't green, you know, the houses don't have paint. It's all some muted brown shade. And I'm told that that's my brain's way of taking something violent and horrible and softening it a little bit so I can live with it and deal with it.
This neighborhood has just been torn apart. Yellow sheets mark the bodies. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 bodies right now. Oh, gosh. This neighborhood has just been devastated.
16 houses have been damaged, many of them completely destroyed. At Los Angeles International Airport, Mary Wong is waiting for her husband and 2 young sons.
I went to the airport to pick them up around noon and waited in that area outside of customs and waited and probably, you know, you're thinking customs might take a little while, but about maybe 12:20 or 12:30, I started seeing a man walk around with a pack on his back with a green cross. We were taken up to a lounge upstairs, and on the elevator up, I looked at the man and I said, "They're dead." I said, "I just know they're gone."
In Cerritos, emergency workers are shocked by another grisly discovery. In the playground of a local school, they find the wreckage of a Piper Cherokee Archer. Remarkably intact, the plane's canopy is sliced off. Its 3 occupants are found still belted into their seats. William Kramer and his family are dead. All the passengers and crew on Aeromexico Flight 498 are also dead. In addition, 15 people on the ground have been killed. It's a horrifying situation. 2 planes have crashed into a California neighborhood. Something's gone terribly wrong in the skies above one of the busiest airports in the world. Now investigators have to find out exactly what happened. On the last day of August in 1986, a lazy Labor Day weekend is shattered by an enormous explosion. 2 planes crash in LA County, destroying several houses. It's a grisly scene. Bodies are scattered throughout a devastated neighborhood. 82 people are dead. 15 people on the ground have been killed. Another 67 have died in the tangled wreckage of the 2 planes involved. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board arrive that night. They include experts in human performance, flight systems, and air traffic control. From the beginning, investigators are focused on the fact that there are 2 planes on the ground. It suggests a disturbing conclusion, that this was a mid-air collision.
The idea that this had been a mid-air collision was already conveyed to us before we even launched out of Hangar 6 back when we got to word. They saw 2 wreckages coming down, and that's the way it got conveyed to us.
With that idea in mind, John White and his team must painstakingly examine the wreckage.
It's more of now documenting where the major pieces were, and then looking at the pieces to see if you can determine how the aircraft, at what angle the aircraft may have come together at.
Propeller marks on the tail of the DC-9 and paint from the Piper Cherokee reveal how the planes crashed.
It looks like the Piper collided at the tail section of the DC-9, and the horizontal stabilizer came off. And once that happened, you could no longer control the pitch of the DC-9.
The descending DC-9 and the climbing Cherokee met at a 90-degree angle. Their combined speed was 450 kilometers an hour. The impact tore off the airliner's tail section. Discovering how the planes collided is the first step. The more important question to be answered is why. To piece together the tragedy, investigators examine the DC-9's flight data recorder. It helps them pinpoint the exact location and altitude of Aeromexico Flight 498. The DC-9 was inside the terminal control area, the controlled airspace of the Los Angeles airport. It was right where it was supposed to be. But the Kramer's Cherokee was also inside the TCA. With all of the jets taking off and landing at LAX, private planes must first get permission to enter this area.
Piper 4891, all clear for takeoff, Torrance.
William Kramer was a newcomer to Los Angeles, but investigators learned that he was well aware of the limits imposed by the TCA. He knew that it was restricted airspace. And in the cockpit of Kramer's Cherokee, the confirmation. Investigators find a map of the Los Angeles terminal control area. Investigators make another puzzling discovery. They learn that the Kramer's proposed flight plan took them from Torrance to Long Beach, then up to Ontario, and finally to Big Bear Lake, at a cruising altitude of 3,000 meters. That plan keeps him well out of the TCA.
The fact of the matter is that the Cherokee flew into the TCA and hit the DC-9 in restricted airspace without a clearance.
So how had Kramer flown into danger? And why hadn't he let anyone know? On the ground in Cerritos, one possible answer emerges. Heart disease runs in Kramer's family, and the initial autopsy results show a major blockage.
Are you all right, Bill?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Kramer may have suffered a heart attack on the flight, leaving the plane without a pilot. Samples of William Kramer's heart tissue are sent to the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology for testing. If he suffered a heart attack, it might explain why he didn't call in to LA approach.
It's totally possible that he could have had the heart attack, fell back, pulled the airplane up, and that's why he didn't try and avoid the DC-9.
But no matter why Kramer was flying in restricted airspace, Air Traffic Controller Walter White should have been able to see him. Kramer's plane should have appeared on White's radar. Before being questioned by investigators, White reviews the radio calls from that morning. He needs to be sure of what he said and what he saw. Richard Wentworth was one of the investigators who talked to White.
At any time, did you see the Piper Cherokee on your scope?
No. No, sir. The Piper's target was not displayed. It is my belief that it was not on my radar scope.
He was positive that the aircraft was not there for him to see.
NTSB investigators aren't satisfied with White's memory. While the radar data is being analyzed, news arrives from the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology about William Kramer's heart.
Are you all right, Bill?
Results from a detailed study of his body show that while he had advanced heart disease, William Kramer was not fighting a heart attack before the collision. Investigators must find another explanation for why the Kramer's flight went into the Los Angeles terminal control area. While he had submitted a flight plan, small planes like Kramer's Cherokee don't have sophisticated instruments. Like most private pilots, Kramer was navigating by landmarks like freeways. That meant keeping an eye both on the landscape below and the airspace around him.
That's definitely the 405. Where is it again?
Right there.
John Andrews is an aviation expert who testified about the circumstances of the Cerritos disaster.
The pilot of the Piper was navigating by visual landmarks, possibly attempting to follow parallel to a freeway, and that he had become confused about which freeway he should have been following.
New to California, perhaps bewildered by the tangle of freeways below him, Kramer may have flown into the terminal control area without knowing it.
There are no lines on the ground that says the TCA starts here and at this altitude. You have to look at a chart, you have to interpret that.
Investigators are now confident they can explain why Kramer was inside the controlled airspace of the TCA. But when he finally gets a look at the air traffic control radar record, Richard Wentworth is convinced that Walter White should have been able to see the Piper.
We were able to determine that the aircraft that collided with Aeromexico was there to be seen.
So why hadn't White reacted to the Kramer's plane if it was on his radar? When Walter White came to work that day, the arrival station was being controlled by Carl Grundman.
Hey, Carl, how's it going? Hey, slow.
Grundman believes that long-standing radar problems were the reason White didn't see the Kramer's plane.
I can sit in for you.
Controllers have been complaining about the radars for a long time.
Yours, buddy. All right, thanks a lot. Take care.
We had reported problems with the radar not picking up targets several times.
When radar signals strike a target, they bounce back to the receiver. But if buildings or mountains interrupt the radar, the return signal can disappear.
You may lose one target. You may lose two targets. It may not be presented for one sweep.
Did you see the Piper Cherokee on your scope?
No, sir.
But that doesn't mean that the target isn't there. A blind spot is only an instantaneous thing. It's not a continuous thing.
think I lost one.
There were also holes that were just because the radar was old. It was just not as accurate as it might have been. It was not state-of-the-art equipment, that's for darn sure.
There's an effect called flicker. When a computer becomes overloaded, the scope will flicker. Every now and then, targets will drop out or can drop out. We reviewed that data. We had no evidence that there were any malfunctions of any systems in Los Angeles.
There is another possible explanation. If the Cherokee had appeared on the radar, White still could have missed it. Investigators focus on the other plane in the sky that day, the Grumman Tiger. Private planes are required to contact air traffic control if they're entering the terminal control area. But the Tiger was already deep into the TCA before it radioed Walter White.
One approach, 66 Romeo is on a flight from Fullerton.
Cruising altitude is 4,500. We'd like following.
Grumman 66 Romeo, are you at 4,500 now?
Negative, we're at 3,400
and climbing.
Okay, you are right in the middle of the TCA, sir.
There was an aircraft that was east of the airport which he became involved in. That was what they called a violator.
Grumman 66 Romeo,
I suggest in future you look at your TCA chart. You just had an aircraft pass.
The problem with the conversation between the controller and the pilot of the Grumman is that it went on too long.
Why were you so mesmerized by the Grumman?
I thought he posed a risk.
This occurred during a critical time at which the two aircraft to the southwest of his display, which was the Aeromexico and the Cherokee, were merging.
But even if the Cherokee's signal did appear on White's radar, and even if he had seen it, investigators discover that White still would not have had all the information he needed. Radar signals only show controllers that a plane is in range. Transponders on planes can broadcast other information, including height and speed. But at the site of the Cherokee wreckage, investigators discover the plane's transponder is a basic model. It only sends out information on the plane's direction. It provides no information about the plane's altitude.
So these controllers were pretty much used to seeing a little triangle which represented a VFR aircraft with no altitude readout, traversing all over the place. And unless they learned firsthand from the pilot, they had an expectation that the aircraft would not intrude into that airspace.
Grumman 66 Romeo, squawk 4524.
Investigators believe that White's divided attention, perhaps made worse by an older radar system, explains why air traffic control never warned the DC-9 of the danger posed by Kramer's Cherokee.
Any landmarks that we might be able to use as a visual.
But there's another mystery that hasn't been solved. Studying the radar records from the day, NTSB investigators are startled by what they find. Neither the crew of the DC-9 nor the pilot of the smaller Cherokee took any evasive action before the crash. Both pilots appear completely unaware of each other.
Definitely the 405.
Why hadn't the pilots of either airplane reacted? Visibility was over 20 kilometers. How could two planes collide in the clear blue sky? To try to get a better sense of what was happening inside the Aeromexico cockpit, investigators listened to the airplane's cockpit voice recorder.
Los Angeles approach, this is Aeromexico 4.
The flight crew had put Walter White on their overhead speakers. The microphone for the cockpit voice recorder was right beside the speakers.
Depart Seal Beach, heading 320.
Much of what the pilot said was drowned out by White's voice.
Reduce speed to 200, then descend and maintain 6,000.
Altimeter bugs.
The radar information paints a puzzling picture. It indicates that for more than a minute, the Kramer's Cherokee was there to be seen by the Aeromexico crew. And if the Kramers had looked out of their right side window, they would also have seen the Aeromexico jet. But neither plane altered its course. Neither plane took any action to avoid the deadly collision. Investigators believe that if William Kramer was indeed lost and using the freeways as a guide, he might never have seen the approaching DC-9. The window he would have been looking out of was the pilot's window, but the DC-9 was coming from the other direction.
A visual landmark that I can...
This would have been a very unfortunate situation because the DC-9 was approaching from the far right side and in fact could only be seen out the passenger's window, which was on the right side of the aircraft.
For the crew of the DC-9, the very size of the much smaller Cherokee could have prevented them from seeing the plane before it was too late.
In some cases, when the small aircraft is closing very rapidly, by the time the aircraft becomes large enough for you to easily see it, it's almost too late to avoid the collision. The FAA generally has taken a sort of as a rule of thumb that you need about 12 seconds in order to see an aircraft, decide that it's a threat, and then execute an avoidance maneuver. In the case of the collision at Cerritos, by the time the aircraft became large enough to see, you were down very close to that 12-second limit. In case after case of mid-air collisions, we find out that the aircraft gave no indication that they saw each other until the time they actually collided.
The design of the cockpit windshield may also have contributed to the disaster.
Hey, Maria. Everything
It's
okay?
possible that during part of the approach, at least for one of the pilots, the aircraft was actually behind the center post, and unless the pilot moved his head back and forth to clear that airspace, unless he had a reason to do that, it's possible the aircraft was obscured during part of the time in which he might have had a chance of seeing the other aircraft.
Ignition.
The disaster over Cerritos revealed several tragic weaknesses in the air traffic control system. One of the most glaring was that pilots could not be relied on to see and avoid each other. They'd need new technology to keep a mid-air collision from happening again. A small California neighborhood is rocked by a terrifying plane crash. "82 people are killed when a private plane slams into a large passenger jet. The devastation is enormous. More than a dozen houses are damaged, several leveled completely. The NTSB report makes it clear that there are glaring problems across the air traffic system. And these concerns must be addressed before, inevitably, there is another mid-air disaster. The FAA, which regulates the airline industry in the United States, acted swiftly to improve safety. A new kind of transponder was required for smaller planes, the kind that might have helped air traffic controllers recognize that the private aircraft posed a danger.
If you had an aircraft that flew under a controlled airspace, you would have a transponder and you would be required to have altitude encoding or reporting. That way it would be no mistake as to whether you had an intruder or not.
A new system called Mode C Intruder was also developed to warn air traffic controllers.
Mode C Intruder is an automated program that is now incorporated in all our major radar facilities, that if an aircraft should inadvertently intrude, the controller will now be given a visual and an oral alert, thus giving him time to provide a timely warning to the pilot.
In-range check. Seatbelts, engine ignition.
Even for the most diligent pilot, the old strategy of see and avoid had serious limitations. Those limitations would be addressed with the most important innovation of all:
major technological innovation that came out of the Cerritos midair was the congressional mandate that all air carrier aircraft operating within the United States would be outfitted with TCAS, Traffic Collision and Avoidance System.
John Andrews worked on the team that developed TCAS.
The TCAS collision avoidance system, which was under development, quite possibly could have prevented this accident. TCAS gives the pilot a traffic advisory at 45 seconds before the potential collision.
Hey, Maria. Everything okay back there?
And then at approximately 25 seconds or so before the potential collision, a resolution advisory is given to actually tell the pilots to climb or descend to avoid the altitude of the other aircraft.
See. Today, commercial airlines around the world use TCAS. The pilot of the Grumman Tiger, the so-called third pilot whose actions may have played a part in the crash, was eventually charged for flying into controlled airspace in a careless and reckless manner. For Walter White, the effect of the disaster over Cerritos could not be overcome.
Walter came back to the TRACON, and I think it was probably a month or so later. And I can't give you exactly how long he stayed there, but it wasn't very long. And he just got up and said, no, no thank you. And as far as I know, he didn't talk to airplanes again.
Within a year of the incident, the old radars at LAX were replaced. In Cerritos, a memorial garden now marks the day of the disaster. Mary Wong has since remarried, but the pain of returning home that day will never go away.
There's nobody here. The house is empty. Derek was already living in an apartment in San Diego, and here I was no longer a mother, except to Derek, and I was no longer a wife. And so it shattered my whole world.
Days after the disaster, Mary Wong met one of the few people who could fully understand her loss.
I went to the memorial service, and it was very important to me to try to meet somebody else who had gone through this. And I knew from reading stories that Teresa had lost her husband and 2 children. And so I saw someone there who I thought was Teresa.
She says, "Are you Teresa Estrada?" And I said, "Yes, I am." She says, "Well, my name is Mary Wong." And she says,
I said, "I lost my husband and children also."
I just wanted to grab her and hug her because she was feeling what I was feeling.
So we had an immediate connection, and we've maintained our friendship over these 20 years.
Everyone who flies today has been affected by the mid-air collision over Cerritos. The disaster led to historic improvements in aviation safety. Since the full adoption of the TCAS system, there has not been another mid-air collision in the United States.